Well, thank you for tuning in to what will amount to be part 2 of the write-in selector issues on Rockola's 436 to 470. We will also include the readout part of the selection process, everything up to where the gripper motor starts, in other words. I wanted to apologize for the recent video on the selector system. The quality was poor, the picture was very narrow, and I hope to correct that with this one. I have some tech issues that I need to deficiencies I need to overcome. But having said that, we will go over one or two clarifications from the recent video, and then we'll go right into the selector problem of the 2-digit machines like the 437, 440 that have a number and a letter. They are much simpler, but they have their own set of challenges I would at least wanted to go over. And then we will go over the readout arm and problems with the readout process, which is, it's certainly simpler, but there are a few common themes there that everyone should know and how to fix it. And it is much more fixable and easier to work on than the read-in problems with the 3-digit machine. So let's get on with this now. As you recall, we did discuss on the 2nd digit process, sequence 4, if the solenoid does not latch itself after the 2nd digit is pressed, you will not get the 2nd digit light, and the problem there would possibly be a bad silicone control rectifier or diode in the individual number circuit. So if that's the case, yes, the latch won't it won't latch and it won't select. You press the 3rd digit, nothing happens, no 2nd digit light. But if you were to press another number for the 2nd digit, say you pressed 5 and it didn't latch for the 2nd digit, 154. If you pressed 164, though, it would latch and everything would be fine. And if that's the situation where just one number in the 2nd digit, and it could be from 0 to 9, if one number isn't latching, that's where you look for a bad SCR or a diode. If the 2nd digit latches and the 3rd digit latches and the search motor starts but keeps going around and around and around, now that's the situation where that particular number, that 2nd digit number 0 to 9, might have a loose connection or dirty connection. And that's where you need to go through the machine and look at all the possible places it could. And just look over here by the on the selection control board. We talked about that side connector having a loose wire there, but it also could be in these bad boys over here. See those connectors, or also on the bottom there's a Molex connector on the bottom of the machine. So I just wanted to clarify that a 2nd digit that doesn't latch, if it's just one number, that can be a bad SCR or diode. But if it does latch and the 3rd digit works and the write-in motor works but doesn't stop, add a loose connection or wire to the dirty circuit board and the K4 relay issues as your causes there. I hope this makes it a little clearer. So let's talk about the write-in process of the 437 to 444 models, and probably some before that, but I'm only I can only speak to the 437 on, as I really have not worked on earlier Rockolas to any extent. But in these models, there is a album checkoff motor which sits in the credit unit. And I have been disabling that. That was an option. It wasn't in all the machines. And I wanted to show you, because it just makes it easier. The first 6 sequences in these manuals talk about this album checkoff motor, which, you know, we don't really have those album records anymore that play 2 or 3 songs on one side. I'm not using it. If you want to use it, then you're on your own. But I found it simpler to simply disable that, cutting the wires. And here in the this is a 450 manual that still had this album checkoff motor in the credit unit. This is from the wiring diagram, by the way. And there's a 15 wire connector there between that album checkoff and the actual credit coils. But if you take the motor off, the switch looks like this, or the connector. Okay, if you want to look at this, all you really need to do is connect the ground wires 1, 3, and 10, and then a gray between 7 and 9, and then a red yellow between 4 and 5. The colors really don't matter. It's just these are the wires you need for the to select any single, which is what you're basically going to be doing. And it's shown here as well, and with the indicator that this album jumper plug is to be used when the album kit is not in place. So I just wanted to clarify that. So really it's the same thing. Be sure your credit switches are clean and your make selection light will go on and the lock bar solenoid goes on. That's different now. In the 1, 2, 3 digit machines, the solenoid didn't go on until after the second of the third digits was placed, but the solenoid is always on if there's credit in these machines. And you may want to make a free play button or so that you establish credit, make your selections, and then give your solenoid a rest in these machines. Otherwise, it will be on all the time if you're on free play with credit. So let's go over the main components of the write-in process in these earlier models, 437 to 444. The keyboard obviously is the most important, and it's not quite as robust as in the later models. There is some tendency for these to, they're a little more vulnerable and they do break off, and this is one I had to part because of damage to the wafer board here. But the principles are still the same. Now the solenoid sits under here, so you want to check the continuity of that. It pulls up, and I'll show you how this all works in a bit. These are your latch switches and lock switches. These are your, when your solenoid kicks in, we'll show that. And still, the same principles apply. You want to clean all these slide switches up, exercise them about 20 times each, because dirty switches are going to foul things up. So do that. And then don't forget these guys up here. This is the, all the machines will have this. This is the album and standard jumpers. Now, this is hooked up correctly now for standard, not the albums, which is what you want. But reseat all of those and clean them. You don't have to, but if you have a problem, certainly with certain selection numbers, this is one place to look. Dirty connections, again, are public enemy number 1. So let me show you, demonstrate if I can, how this works, and then we'll move on to the credit unit and power supply. So when the solenoid kicks in, I hope I can do this for you. Those two switches down there close, okay? And then once they close, then when you select a letter and a number over here, all the switches will be closed, the visible ones, and so they all should be clean and adjusted. Once that happens, then your write-in motor will start. I must say one other thing about the reset button here, okay? That is right here underneath, and be sure that's making and breaking as it should. That's very, very important because it carries a lot of current, and sometimes if that switch is shorted, then that's going to cut down. It's just going to make your keyboard dead. So I've had that problem. The other problem I've had is this power resistor here needs to be checked. It takes a lot of current right off the connections and solenoid. It goes to ground, so reseat connections here. But that's basically it for the keyboard. As in the other models, the K4 relay is the next step in the process here as the right-end motor goes around. The K4 relay will kick in when the hot spot's been hit and the wipers go past, and that will stop your right-end motor. And as I mentioned before, then simultaneously you will get the when the K4 kicks in, the motor brakes, the current limiting bulb went on. You'll see that, and then the accumulator reset and ADR relay come in to play at the end of the cycle. Now, this is your accumulator reset. It works off the debit coil. Just be sure these contacts are clean. This is very important. That fires the hammer coil, basically the selection impulse switch there, and this is your ADR relay. That's later on, of course, that was replaced by the sequence N relay, but these contacts must be clean in that coil check, and that should complete your right-end process pretty much in these machines. Not nearly as complicated. I want to say something about the power supply, and then we'll move on. Now here's a sketch of the 437 power supply, and I wanted you to see that sort of a common theme here. Black is ground, it's pin 1, and pin 4 is your white-black wire, but that's your 25 volt AC, so check that. There aren't as many capacitors, if any, in these earlier power supplies. The rectifiers are usually pretty good, but certainly if you're talking about your keyboard, you've got to be sure you have 25 volts. So this is the 437, and that's the pinout. In reference to ground, pink would be your minus 51 DC. Purple is also minus 51. And then note that you have a blue-white wire coming out for 6.3 volts, and that goes to your keyboard make select light. I should have mentioned that. And in this case, it's a 44 or 47 bulb, not the 53 bulb, just for general information. Now, on the 4710 power supply, this is for the 448, 451. Just for reference again, this is your selection system, Molex, and black again is number 1, ground. Number 4 would be your minus 30 volts DC. And in this case, the white-black is pin 6, and that's your 25 volt DC compared to ground. So put your AC multimeter leads across there and be sure you have that. And I think that's purple yellow we mentioned is minus 33 volts DC. Voltages are obviously important. And then, of course, there's no selection control box and all those diodes and SCRs to deal with in these earlier machines. Cleaning the right-in circuit board is still the biggest issue, and the wipers as far as the right-in relay motor continuing to spin. Cleaning the K4 connections would also be another solution if that's the case. Okay, we're going to go on and talk about the readout process in all of these machines. It's pretty similar. It's pretty simple, and it won't take too long. The readout process starts when the stop relay contacts operate the wobble plate solenoid, and all that solenoid does is move the plate over. So when the selection impulse switch hammers the pin, it's easier to hammer the pin. And you would know that if you had tried to move a pin without the solenoid. If it's the first pin, there's a lot of resistance there because you got to pull the plate over yourself with your finger. But once the first one is over, all subsequent pins move very easily. So that solenoid just moves it over, makes it easier to select the first pin. But ultimately, all the action occurs through that wobble plate switch, not the solenoid. The solenoid only operates briefly, but the switch needs to be actuated. And sometimes that spring steel, that round U-shaped spring steel is not, it's broken off. And when the pin gets hammered, the wobble plate solenoid kicks in, but the switch doesn't get activated because there's not enough pressure on it if that spring steel is broken. And you got to look for that as a cause. Other than that, when the readout arm starts to go around, you certainly want to clean all the contacts here, clean all the wipers, check continuity of the coils around 45 ohms, clean those little blade switches that operate the or connect to the nubbins that hit the selected pins, and you should be okay. Now, if your readout arm goes around and around, yes, it's probably dirty contacts, but it could be that the AB switch assembly is faulty. Maybe there's a loose connection here. Maybe the switch isn't working. So you want to certainly reseat this guy. This is the green one, and it goes over here and connects to the drum. Now, the other problem I encountered on a house call was someone had tried to fix this, and the worst problems are iatrogenic or man-made. He had reversed the two leads here. When he cleaned this, he put the wires on backward, the blue one where the green one should be, and his readout arm just came around and around, never did anything. And that was quite a difficult situation to figure out, but I didn't figure it out till I got home. I simply replaced the part and we got lucky. Now, the other causes of intermittent missing or canceling the coil, it's common for a record to play over and over again, and that usually means that the pin wasn't canceled after the record was brought out. Now, that cancellation is due to this micro switch 2A on the back. It is the one that actually sends power to the hammer coil on this arm here. About 2/3 of the way out, when the record is almost set down, these guys fire based on what micro switch 2A tells them. So that's the circuit that you have to look at, clean contacts, check that. There are other causes of failure of the pin to cancel, and they are, we mentioned, a dirty circuit board, an open cancel coil. That's usually then only the non-hit or hit side won't get canceled. The coil could be out of alignment, in which case there is an adjustment for this readout arm. A bad AB switch connection we talked about. And then a bad diode on the back of this switch. And right here, there's a resistor and diode in this whole assembly that controls the current going out through the AB switch. So check those two diodes. That's not that common, but it does happen. We mentioned the faulty micro switch. And then look at these cancel arms. Sometimes you can certainly envision that this cancel arm for the hit side especially is all worn down after 50,000 or 100,000 plays. And if you're not canceling your hit side records and it's playing over and over again, certainly look at this cancel coil. These are available through the Netherlands Jukebox Revival sells these. They're probably 3D printed, but gosh, you got to have it if it's not working. Now, the earlier ones have metal cancel arms. They never wear down, but these from the 453 to 470, yeah, look at that. And this is not a cancel coil I would put in a customer's machine. I would replace it. It probably still works most of the time, but hey, not always. So, and then look at your control box. Be sure all the connections are correct there. There's 4 Molex connectors. Reseat all of them. Be sure they're good. When you're finished servicing in here, be sure that the trip and interlock coil have this relationship. This coil on the right should be overlapping the one on the left. And I think really that about covers it. The AB switch, the control box, make sure all the relays and connections are good there. Clean your wipers, clean your circuit board. Look at your micro switch, and you should be good to go. I hope you got something out of this video. We tried to cover most of the selector problems. Many other YouTube videos are available on the the mechanism and getting it unfrozen and making adjustments there. So the next video will have to wait until I get another problem that's interesting and I could share with you. I'm also going to try to cut my teeth on a couple Seeburg discotheque and stereo showcase machines, and if I get proficient at that, I'll share that as well. But thanks again, and until next time, enjoy your day.